Hi, everybody. Welcome back yet again. I hope you guys are all having a good start to your year. You're not too busy getting back to work after the holidays and everything. I know I've definitely been busy starting a new job this year, so that's a little bit crazy. But I have managed to find some little pockets of time that I'm trying to use to record because I definitely want to get through this book. I think this is probably like my first recorded video, like actually in the light of day, which is pretty cool. Usually it's, somewhere in the middle of the night. So I'm glad to have a little window of time where I can record another chapter or two for you guys. And I'm excited for me because I want to keep reading. I think we're on chapter six. Yeah, we're on chapter six, which is the start of part two of the book. So I know it feels like I'm going through this like a snail, but I promise I'm doing the best I can for you guys. But I'm gonna jump right into chapter six, which is called The Inspector. Once Tress made the decision, a knot came undone within her, like she'd finally worked a tangle out of a stubborn lock of hair. She would do it. She had no idea how, but she would find a way to get off the island, cross the terrible Crimson Sea, enter the Midnight Sea, and rescue Charlie. Yes, each of those problems seemed equally impossible, but somehow less impossible than imagining the rest of her life without him. First, though, Tress went to talk to her parents, something more people in stories such as this should do. That's so true. I have a soapbox about that. I'll tell you guys about that later. Anyways, she sat them both down, then explained her love for Charlie, her realization that no one would help him, and her determination to go find him, though she expressed worry that her absence might cause them hardship. Both listened quietly as she spoke. This was in part because she'd baked them quail egg pies. It's more difficult to object to your daughter's temporary insanity when your mouth is full. Once she'd finished, Lem asked for seconds. It was a two-pie type of predicament. Olba only finished half of her meal, sitting back and leaving the rest untouched. It was also a half-pie type of predicament. Tress's father ate his second pie with deliberate care, digging down from the top, then eating outward, saving the crust for the end. Finally, he crunched through that. Then he stared at the plate for a long, uncomfortable moment. Was it, perhaps, three-pie predicament? I think, he said at last, turning to Olba, we're going to have to let her do this. It's lunacy, Tress's mother said. Leave the island, travel to the Midnight Sea, steal a prisoner from the sorceress? Lem felt at his mustache bristles with his napkin, clearing out remnants of the meal. Alba, would you say our daughter is more practical than we are? Yes, normally. I would normally say that, Alba said. And would you also say she's more truthful? Oh, wow. Thoughtful than we are? She's always thinking, Tress's mother agreed. How often does she impose upon people or ask for what she wants? Almost never. With all that in mind, Tress's father said, it must be the right decision for her to leave. She will have considered all other options. Leaving the island to rescue the man she loves might sound like lunacy, but if every other option has been discarded as impossible, then insanity might, in this case, be practical. Tress felt a small thrill inside. He agreed? Tress, her father said, leaning forward, resting his once powerful arms on the tabletop. We can care for your brother and ourselves if you go. Please do not worry about us. You are too accommodating in this regard. But neither of us can go with you. You understand this? Yes, father, she said. I had always wondered if this island would prove too small for one such as you. This made Tress frown. Why do you act like that? He asked her. I don't want to be rude. Then I demand you tell me, so that not speaking would be even more rude. Her grimace worsened. Well, why would you say the island is too small for me, father? There's nothing extraordinary about me. If anything, I'm too small for it. Everything is extraordinary about you, Tress, her mother said. That's why nothing in particular stands out. That's kind of nice. Well, parents have to say things like that. They're required to see the best in their children. Otherwise, living with a little sociopaths would drive a person mad. Okay, let's see how you feel about kids, Brandon. I have your blessing then? Tress asked them. I still think this is a terrible idea, Ulba noted. Lem nodded. It is. But a terrible idea executed brilliantly has to be better than a brilliant idea executed terribly. I mean, look at pelicans. True, Tress's mother said. But are we capable of either kind of brilliance? No, Tress said. But maybe we can take a whole lot of little steps that, when looked at together, might seem brilliant to somebody who doesn't know us. I love this logic. And so they set to work. Tress was keenly aware that Charlie might be suffering, but she resolved to take her time. If she was going to do something as stupid as leave the island, she figured she should be meticulous about it. Perhaps that would dilute the stupidity with time, like how good flour could dilute the stale and improve the bake. She took to knitting socks at the cliffside so she could watch the ships that came and left. Her mother began to make stockings at a table near the dock so she could take notes. They compared their findings each night, with Tress's father listening and offering his thoughts. Though Tress had always possessed a curiosity about the mechanics of shipping, she now had a motive to learn the details. There were two types of people who regularly left the island. First was, of course, the crews of various ships. When they landed, they'd come ashore to shop or visit the local taverns. The Rock didn't have much to recommend it, but Brick's ale was known as some of the best in the region. Plus, with enough of it in you, the rest of the amenities looked a whole lot better. The second type of people who left the Rock were government officials, not only the Duke and his family, but other royal administrators, such as tax collectors, royal messengers, and cargo inspectors. They were allowed to leave when they saw fit. Members of the nobility who visited could also leave, and they usually did so quickly after realizing their awful mistake. Tress's biggest challenge would be the current cargo inspector. The severe woman authenticated the writs of visiting merchants, then examined cargo for stowaways. For a place where no one wanted to live, the Rock certainly had lots of things people wanted. Salt from the mines, Brick's ale, even down and feathers from the gulls. The townspeople couldn't sell these things except to ships that had a writ of commission from the king. The cargo inspector oversaw it all. When the current one had arrived earlier in the year, she'd refused to give her name, insisting they simply call her Inspector. She claimed she wouldn't be remaining on the Rock long enough for names to matter. Tress couldn't remember an inspector who'd been more strict. This woman was always watching, swinging the rod she carried, searching for any excuse to deliver a punishment. She seemed too stern to be fully human. As if instead of being born, she had spawned, and instead of growing up, she'd metastasized. Yikes. Tress and her mother spent hours covertly studying how the inspector searched outgoing shipments. Bags of feathers were weighed, while barrels of salt were stabbed to search for possible stowaways. But some things being shipped, like large kegs of local brew, couldn't be opened without spoiling them. What if a person were to hide in a keg? Could they fill it with something like salt to make it weigh and balance correctly? Unfortunately, the inspector had an answer to such potential escape plans. When examining kegs, she employed a special listening device, like the ones physicians use for hearts. The inspector would linger on each keg, listening for someone moving or breathing inside. Reportedly, the inspector had extremely good hearing and could detect the very heartbeats of stowaways. Was there a way around this? A way to exploit the situation? One night, 2 weeks after she'd first decided to leave, Tress sat up with a notebook full of ideas. The emerald moon shone bright as always, stoic and immobile in the sky. Spores poured downward in the distance like crystalline moonlight. Her father limped over, settled down, then waved for her to show him her plans. He read them carefully and nodded. This could work. It could, Tress said, yawning, but I don't think it will. I might be able to fool a bunch of sailors, but I'd never fool Brick, Grimmy, or Sore. They will know that something's wrong. She rubbed her eyes. She'd been going without sleep, fraught as she was. Worry, it might be said, is the carrion feeder of emotions, drawn to other, better emotions like crows to a battlefield. Perhaps you don't have to fool them, her father said. Perhaps they'd be willing to help. I couldn't ask that of them, Tress said. What if the inspector catches me? The others would get into too much trouble. Her father nodded again. That was, of course, the sort of thing Tress would say. So he suggested she go to bed. Tress looked as if she were about to fall asleep in the middle of the conversation, which was saying something considering how many of Charlie's stories she'd survived without so much as a yawn. After she went upstairs, Lem retrieved his cane, put on his coat, and went out to do some advanced fathering. Ah! Okay, I have to read the next chapter. That was way too short. Chapter 7 is called The Father. Lem was not a poor man. Now, you might say to me, Hoyd, this entire story has shown me the opposite. Lem's family is always scrimping to survive. And I would reply, please stop interrupting. Lem was not poor. He simply didn't have a lot of money. That night, as Tress slept, Lem limped down the long road to Brick's tavern. He knew for certain that Grimmy and Sore would be there. After all, the tavern didn't close until 2. Lem hobbled in. It was still early enough that the place was happy and boisterous. Evenings at the tavern, as you know, are like fires in a hearth. They live 2 lives. There's the part where they're roaring, festive, and cheerful. Then the evening begins to drift. The tavern becomes colder, darker, and quieter. Those who populate the tavern during its second life don't want companionship, just company. That was a few hours away, so Lem passed laughing miners sharing rounds and chatting about their boring, about their boring. He spotted Grimmy and Sore together, as they often were. Dock worker and the dock master looked like opposite ends of a tack. Grimmy, with his squat body and flat head, had a haircut that said, "What's the cheapest?" Sore was ostensibly Grimmy's boss, but rarely brought the matter up in case it might accidentally sound like he was offering to pay the tab. He sat tall and straight and sipped at a beer because he didn't want to be seen drinking the wine that he could afford. Brick, of course, was behind the bar, standing on his stool to be at eye height to his patrons. Tress needed all 3 men's help, but Lem didn't approach any of them. Instead, he took up position near the dartboard. Jewel was playing, and offered Lem the next game, which he happily accepted. Lem threw the first dart several feet below the board, hitting the wood there on one of 2 knots that bore holes from a large number of darts. Jewel eyed it approvingly and took his own throw, hitting near Lem's. I hear, Lem said, taking his second throw, you helped Grimmy with his tab again. Right nice of you, that was. Jewel nodded in appreciation. Next game was against old Rod, the innkeeper. Lem missed his first 2 throws, unfortunately. One was so off, it hit the dartboard. The third hit far beneath it, though. Nice, Rod said. Does that cane help with your balance, Lem? I swear you've gotten better at darts since the accident. Having a cane doesn't help with darts, Rod, Lem said. Having nothing to do, though. Rod grunted. You still help Brick with the brewing on weekends? Lem asked. More often than not, Rod said, and took his throws. After that, Rod moved off, making way for another game and another. As men came to play Lem, they read the unspoken script of his questions. They remembered that time when Rod had been drunk and Lem had helped him home, and Jewel when he had lost his roof during a windstorm. Lem had helped him build a new one. There were dozens of similar stories. Lem was the human equivalent of a deep, pure well, always full of water when you needed it. What a great way to describe somebody. He'd offer you what you needed and ask nothing in return. In fact, he'd never bring it up again, unless it was urgent, unless it was important. In those cases, well, Lem might have been poor in the kind of currency that paid taxes, but he was downright wealthy when it came to that kind of currency that mattered. Word got around that night. Lem needed something, specifically from Gremmy, Sore, and Brick. Lem, the man with no debt, needed this favor so badly he almost asked for it. In the language of men like these, that's the equivalent of begging. Lem continued playing darts and scored quite well. If you're wondering at the odd targets they used, it should be noted that, one evening a couple years earlier, someone had noticed that a group of knots high on the wall looked an awful lot like a face. The Duke's face, in fact. If you imagine the grain of the wood as his hair, and the dartboard as the family insignia on his chest. I don't know where this is going. And well, somewhere below that were two prominent knots in the wall, right above where the legs would have been. Lem threw, and a nearby man winced. Nice, one noted. This is bad. As the night progressed, quiet, invisible ledgers were tallied. Decisions were reached but not spoken. They didn't need to be, for the next morning, too early for any of them. Tress found the barkeep, the dock master, and the dock worker on her doorstep. They demanded to help her in whatever she was doing. So it was that a little over a week later, a large keg was deposited on the docks for inspection. Gremmy pushed it up alongside 5 others. The perfect ship had arrived for executing Tress's plan, a vessel known as the Oot's Dream. It needed to be a ship with a crew that didn't often visit Diggins Point, and it needed a king's writ authorizing the purchase of Brick's ale. The sailors of the Oot's Dream nearly took the kegs on board without inspection, but the captain had read the terms of his writ. There's supposed to be an inspection, is there not? He demanded. We cannot leave port until it has been done. So the inspector was summoned. She arrived with a scowl that could have killed spores. Her rod held at the ready to deal out justice. She examined the first keg, then used her listening device on it. Nearby, Sore peered at his pocket watch, counting the seconds, his heart thumping. Gremmy mopped his head as the inspector moved down the line of kegs. Brick nudged him, trying to urge him not to look so suspicious. Finally, the inspector listened to the last large keg. Just big enough for a girl to curl up inside it was. The inspector listened closely and found nothing. She waved for the cargo to be loaded. The 3 conspirators exchanged glances, until the inspector paused and turned back. Then, in a sudden motion, she kicked over the last keg. It went thump. Then it went ouch. I thought so, the inspector said, grabbing a crowbar from the dock, then prying the keg's top free to reveal the truth. A raven-haired young woman hiding inside, trying to sneak off the island. Feathers as insulation, the inspector cried. You thought that would muffle the sounds enough to fool my ear? Well, after that, things went downhill at speed. This couldn't have been managed without help, the inspector snapped at the dockmaster. This couldn't have been managed without a conspiracy. Poor Gremmy couldn't take it, and started bawling right there. Brick tried to quiet him, while Sore wondered out loud if maybe he could order Gremmy to take his punishment for him. The king has worried about your disloyalty, the inspector said with a sneer. He warned me about the people of this town. He will be told of this, that you all work together to circumvent his laws. Pay for only 5 kegs, Captain. The other 5 kegs were loaded onto the ship, and the ship took off toward the Emerald Sea's core archipelago to deliver the ale. The inspector went with them, leaving her assistant to watch the docks, declaring that she would tell the king personally of the betrayal at Diggins Point. Now, you might have noticed that the young woman in the barrel was not Tress, and you might think she was actually in one of the other kegs. She was not. Tress was not hiding in some other piece of cargo. Tress was not hiding at all. Tress was the inspector. It's good, it's good, it's good, guys. It's getting so good. I'm so excited. All right. I think I'm going to stop there for today. Chapter 8 will be next, but it's so good. Man, her dad is so, what a good guy. I love this. I love like those little nuances that Brandon Sanderson writes that just show the characters so well. Like, I don't know, I'm definitely enjoying his writing style a lot more than I thought I was going to, and that's really cool. So, hopefully I'll be back soon with more chapters. So I'm really trying to like get back on a schedule and like get more regular videos for you guys. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully, I will see you again soon. And thanks for being here again. I appreciate you guys a lot. It means a lot that you're here, and I love reading your comments and everything. So drop me a comment if you want to, and watch for the next few chapters. Bye.